what I'm going to do here is we're going to start by talking about some of the new features we're going to have available in the next point release of Mocha. The first thing that we're happy to announce is, like, we listen to you guys, and we will have support for red footage. So I'm going to open up this red footage here. So this file has preloaded in some red footage. It's just native red. And you can see that it's like kind of some 4K mess. So like what it is it's going to like absolutely slow my computer down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down to about a quarter res, okay, just by a little drop-down menu. And now I will be able to just fly through it, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to track this backwards and show you how fast this will track red footage when you knock it down to about a quarter. So let's go. What I've done is I've just drawn an X-spline in this area, and we're going to start tracking backwards. All right, and it is just chewing through that like nothing, all right? And this is on a 3-year-old laptop, so I'm kind of happy about that. All right, so we are tracking, we're tracking basically 90% of the pixels used inside this spline, and that's kind of what's cool about Mocha, okay? Mocha, as long as you're tracking from the most data to the least data, Mocha will hang on whatever's going on in your shot. So even though this is blurring and going super nasty, Mocha doesn't care because Mocha is trying to match 90% of the pixels in that little patch. It's not looking for features, it's not looking for points, it's literally looking for the movement of pixels over time, all right? So, and that works kind of like this. I've done this before in all my demos, and I'll use visual aids for you guys now. Visual aid, this is a plane. This plane is moving in space, all right? Let's talk about how the planar tracker thinks. All right, these pixels that you guys are seeing are moving faster than these pixels up here, all right? So if I drew a little spline around this down here and Mocha measured the movement of these pixels, it would predict the entire movement for this entire range, all right? Because it's just relative pixel data, all right? So let's talk about why you guys care about that. You guys care about that because, for instance, it can cut your roto time in half, all right? So let's show you a little bit about that. Now, I did stereo conversion for a long time, and I had to roto all my own shots. And so what I had to do is, if I had not had Mocha, I would have been very frustrated. But here's a shot that I rotated from Silent House, and let's talk a little bit about keyframes and rotoscoping and how we save ourselves time by using Mocha. So this is the roto I've got, and I'll come back to this, but I want to show you guys how I did that, all right? So the first thing that I did is I came in here and I am drawing a shape around the side of her face. Now, why am I drawing a shape around the side of her face to track and not her whole face if I want to roto her head? All right? Well, here's why. All right? This is a plane, and so is this. And these two planes are at 90 degrees to one another. So if you try to get relative information for this plane and include relative information from this plane, it's not going to be relative to one another. So you're tracking two planes at once, and Mocha will be confused. All right? So that's how our tracker works. Now I'm going to track translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective. All right? Now here's what that means. Translation, scale, rotation, we all got that, but shear and perspective just blow people's minds, and I don't know why. But shear is just movement in X and Y. So a square becoming a diamond, a squib on somebody's shirt, anything like that, all right? So that is shear. Perspective is that same sort of movement, but in Z space. So like a door opening or her head turning, you know? All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to track this forward. And what Mocha's going to do is Mocha's going to try to match that pixel information over time, all right? And it's going to calculate the way her head is turning. And it's going to try to use that to drive anything I need it to drive. And in this case, I need it to drive roto, okay? She looks like she's disagreeing with something. She's, agree with me. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to lock this. Well, actually, we're going to name it first because we like to name our layers. When we pass off files to our coworkers that are like layer 19, they're going to come to our desk and murder us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this face rough tracks, all right? And I'm going to lock it, hide it, and turn it off. Or if I came back to my shot in a week, I would be like, what the hell is layer 19? Anyway, so I'm going to lock that and hide it because I want to come in here and I want to draw a nice shape around my head. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in here with my X-splines. Now, I like using X-splines. The reason I like using X-splines instead of Beziers, we have Beziers if you want them, but I like using X-splines because you pull tight for a corner and you relax for a curve. So here's what I mean. I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to relax for a curve or pull tight for corners. It's very, very fast and it scales better with our skew and perspective data. All right, so it ends up saving you more time because you use less keyframes. Now, you can use Beziers if you want to. You still can. It's fine. Use them all day long. Depends on what your preference is, but my preference is X-splines, and that's why. All right, so tight for a corner. Now it's right into that point on her eye, and I'm done. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to call this face fine rotos, and I am going to link this to face rough track. And now, as I move this through the shot, what I do is I correct the shape where it has gone wrong. So I'm going to move till it starts to go wrong, and then I'm going to correct it. And basically what I'm doing is I am sort of correcting Mocha's roto. Mocha's like my roto assistant that makes like a really rough first pass, and I come in and clean it up. So I end up making about 1/3 of the keyframes I would normally make because Mocha's doing most of the work, okay? And I end up using about half about the time I would normally do it. So 1/3 of the keyframes, half the time, all right? So that is how that works, all right? You see we're tweening between those two shapes, moving with the track. Now, what that will end up looking like is for things like backgrounds, I'll just do a track, and there's my one keyframe. That drives my roto for my entire shot, all right? For things like her face where she's moving it, obviously I will use a little bit more keyframes. You know, it'll be every like 4 or 5 keyframes, all right? But like for stuff like her scarf, 2 keyframes, all right? Like this is the kind of way we save you time, all right? And this is a handheld shot, so normally that would take a lot of roto movement to do. All right, so some of the other new things that I want to talk about that are new in version 3 of Mocha is you notice we have this new bounding box. Excuse me. We have this new bounding box, which basically I can scale, I can skew, I can rotate, etc. over time. And that is how we end up with nice fluid motion over the shot. Everybody asked for that, so we included it. We also included a dope sheet. So now we have a dope sheet. All right, we used to have this thing called the curve editor. You can still get to it if you used to play in it and you liked playing in it. But if you're a novice, it's a great place to break your shot. So stay out of here unless you know what you're doing. All right, so instead go into your dope sheet where you can have access to all of your tracking information and all of your spline information, all right? And you can start to move this around. So let's say you get 5 new frames at the head of the shot, because that never happens. Oh, wait. You can just move it all over. So you just, like, if you want to move all the frames over, you just go drag and drag, all right? You can also cut and paste them. So if I wanted to move them all, just cut and paste. Now they're back where they go. So you can start to really have access to your keyframes now, all right? The last thing I want to show you guys that's kind of new in Mocha version 3 in Roto, as far as Roto goes, there's 2 things. I'm sorry. I keep saying there's the last thing, but it's actually 2 things. What we have now is we have something called the Join Layers tool. This will come in handy when I guys show you the Remove tool, because the Remove tool will blow your mind. But anyway, what I can do is I can now take 2 points, or any points, I can take shapes and I can parent them to one another, right? So now they follow each other over time, which means I can get nice seamless Roto. All right, so if I wanted to roto the front of somebody's face, the side of somebody's face in different parts, because the Mocha's better at that sort of thing and breaking up in planes, just connect along the lines and you're done. All right, now I'll show you in the Remove tool when we get to that how awesome that is. All right, so the other thing I want to show you guys is if you now need to split up shots into various groups of people, like you tend to do when you're working in a large roto group, you can now merge projects in and out. You just go to File, Merge Project, and you can start to load all of your other roto shots that you've given to other people into the shot, all right? So let's move on to stuff that's not rotoscoping, because I'm afraid sometimes I'm going to put people to sleep with rotoscoping, even though it's awesome to be able to save you time with it. You know, it's not the flashiest thing in the world. We need more Zazzle in this demo, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to load up the 3D camera solver. Now, this is a shot that Steve Wright was nice enough to let us use. And basically what we're going to do here is we are going to track the front wall and the side wall and the sidewalk of this shot. And we're going to use that tracking data to build a camera in Mocha. All right, so, I mean, and export that to Nuke or After Effects or wherever we need to export it. So I'm going to track these, and let's talk a little bit about the camera solver while those are tracking. Let me turn this surface tool on so you can see what the track is doing. I like to track with my grid and surface tool on because I can see what my track is doing as I go. And as long as I have good solid planar tracks, I'll be able to have good solid camera solving information. Now I keep using the word camera solver, all right? I'm not saying camera tracker. I'm saying that for a reason. Just like how Mocha is a planar tracker, not a point tracker or a feature tracker, we have a camera solver, not a camera tracker. A camera tracker is trying to solve for the camera that shot the shot, okay? Mocha's camera solver is trying to solve for any planes that you're tracking in the shot, okay? We've broken that up into like 3 different types of cameras, but essentially any match mover will know that you have several different solves you can have for any match move, okay? And as long as you have one that works, you can then composite that back in. And we're all, at the end of the day, compositing in 2D anyway, all right? So I'm done tracking that. Now let's select all 3 of those layers. They're already selected. Go to the camera solver. All right, we have a couple of different options in our camera solver. All right, we have auto, which basically Mocha will run through every single process it can and try to guess the best one, all right? We also have pan, tilt, zoom. So we've broken all types of camera moves into 3 types of movements. Pan, tilt, zoom, which is a fixed camera on a tripod that is either panning, tilting, or zooming. All right, I think we got that. All right, small parallax is any sort of camera that's not fixed that has either a very small parallax, and the reason that small parallax is called small parallax is because we have a camera that's like far away looking at objects in the distance, and what that means is that the parallax between objects will be small, okay? If we have a close camera looking at close objects, the parallax will be large. In this case, let's look at the sign here for a second. You see how that sign, the stop sign, is moving from like one side of this thing to the other side of this thing? That's a pretty large parallax, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to solve this for large parallax, and we're going to solve with a focal length of 35 to 70 millimeters. Basically, these focal lengths are based on the lenses. So I'm going to hit solve, and it will solve. It'll just take a second. It takes about 10 seconds for the shot. And basically, any solve above a 70% is considered good. All right, that's just an arbitrary number we picked for success. All right, so anything above a 70 is considered good. I like to work above 90. This is a 98% solve. I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I can now export this camera data, okay? In Mocha for After Effects version 3, you can only export this data to After Effects, but in Mocha Pro, you can export this data to After Effects, generic FBXs that will go into like things like Cinema 4D, Maya, 3D Studio, etc. Or you can export it to Nuke. So I'm going to export it to Nuke by saving it. All right, and I already have one saved, so I'm not gonna resave it over the top of that. But we're gonna load up Nuke here. And what I've done, let me just close these, is I've loaded in this read geo, and in this read geo I have loaded in my camera solver FBX. All right. Now I've also loaded in a little read geo with a 3D model. I've hooked that 3D model. In Mocha, you know how we have the surface tool, okay? The surface tool, you had seen that I aligned to the ground and the side walls, okay? That surface tool will come into Nuke or any other program as like null points. Those null points are at all 4 corners of the surface and 1 in the center. In this case, we use the center null to align this Hulk geo, and now I have a character that moves in 3D space, all right, based on my planar track out of Mocha. It takes like 5 minutes. All right. Now, we're not trying to compete with camera trackers. We can actually help camera trackers solve difficult shots to solve. So in some cases, you can take Mocha's planar data, and if a background is too blurry for a camera tracker to lock onto, you can just put in non-blurry data over there, and the camera tracker will use that to build the shot. Because there are going to be sometimes, like when you do set extensions and things like that, that are multi-plane set extensions, where you would want to use a camera tracker. But if it was only a single plane set extension, you just use Mocha and it'd be fine. All right, so let's move on. I have 2 more things I want to show you guys. I want to show you the lens and insert tool, and I want to show you guys the remove tool. So first we're going to show you the lens and insert tool, and then I'm going to get to my favorite tool, which is the remove tool. So let's load up this fence shot. And it'll take about a second. Go to track tab, lens tab, sorry. All right, so in my lens tab, I'm going to go to where I have straight lines that I can see in the shot, and here's why. All right, Mocha looks at curved lines in a shot and tries to make them straight. That's how it generates its lens information. We are really excited to say that in our next point release, we will be able to export this lens data actually out of Mocha. In the past, you've only been able to render and undistort footage in Mocha or distort inserts in Mocha and render them out. Now you're going to be able to take rendered ST maps and take them into anything that can read an ST map, like Nuke. All right. Or you can export the lens data to After Effects, and I'll show you how that looks. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask Mocha to look at this shot and tell me every single line that it thinks needs to be straight. Mocha's a computer, so it says everything needs to be straight, all right? Well, everything doesn't need to be straight, okay? We need some difference in this world, but I'm just going to tell it what does need to be straight, all right? So I'm going to hit N for new line, N for new line, N for new line, and N for new line. And you see I connect the dots every time I hit N, and what I end up with is I end up with 4 reference points that Mocha can use to undistort the footage, okay? So what I'm telling Mocha is I'm saying, look at these 4 lines and try to make them straight. It doesn't look at these 4 lines and say, ah, that's a 40 millimeter lens. Like, it looks at the line and says, I think if I do this, it'll work, okay? So it's a visual solve. All right, so here's what we do. I'm going to use a 1 parameter distortion and a focal distance of 8, okay? And the reason I use a focal distance of 8 has to do with the lens that I'm using and the sensor that I'm using. And if you look on our website, you will notice that we have a whole chart in our documentation about how this works, why it works, and I know everybody reads documentation. And I always get a sea of faces that are like, ha ha ha. Yeah, I know. All right, so we have a 2-part video series on our website that's 15 minutes apiece that will walk you through the entire lens tool if you're very interested in that. Now, we also have tons of other free videos on our website. So if you go to www.imagineersystems.com or www.mocha-pro.com, they both go to the same place. You'll end up with a lot of free videos that you can use for free training, okay? So, done with my spiel on that. Let's talk about how we use this. I'm going to hit calibrate. And you can see up here that it's calibrating. And this is the warp it came up with. Now, I feel like that is a pretty accurate warp. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my track tab. And actually, I'm going to export this out. I'm going to export my lens data to After Effects. So I'm going to copy this to the clipboard. I'm going to go over to After Effects, which I conveniently already have loaded. I'm going to delete my previous lens that I pasted on here. And I'm going to go to frame 1. Now, the reason I go to frame 1 is because every time you paste Mocha data into Nuke or After Effects or anything, you always do it on frame 1 or frame 0. Depending on whatever the start of the comp is, that's where you paste it in. Okay? So I'm going to go paste. All right? And it thinks that I actually want to apply that distortion over the top of it. I don't. So I want to remove the distortion. All right? So now, my shot is undistorted. All right? Undistorted. Right. All right. So that's how that works. So in our next point release, you'll be able to do that in both After Effects and Nuke. So that's kind of happy times. Now, if I wanted to just do that in Mocha, I would just take, I've already done a track on this shot. I would just take my track, and this is my track. Whee! All right. And I would take my corner pin, and you see that my corner pin is now warped according to what is going on with the lens tool. Okay. I would just insert anything I wanted to put on this corner pin. In this case, I'm going to put my logo on the corner pin because I am, as always, shamelessly plugging our product. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Insert tab, I'm going to go to Motion Blur, and I'm going to start rendering backwards. And what will happen is Mocha will render this insert out with its own motion blur, its own alpha channel, and its own warp, okay, that I can just drop into my comp without having to do a whole bunch of hard work. All right. That is our insert tool. All right, so you can use that for a lot of stuff. You can also use it for patching and stuff like that if you're trying to do paintings. Now, oh, and set extensions and stuff like that. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is my absolute favorite tool. I know I've mentioned it a couple times now. It's the Remove tool, all right? This is from Fly Effects. This is a remove on a Victoria's Secret model. Basically, she has a fabulous set of froofy, swishy wings. And in order to make her wings properly swish, she has to have a harness on, okay? And that harness just does not go with her outfit. It really doesn't. Like, a black belt with sequins? I don't think so. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to remove that belt, but we can't see behind that belt because that belt's actually on her body, okay? So what I did is I essentially took 4 frames out of this whole 105-shot sequence, and I painted with a clone tool in certain areas to sort of remove that belt, okay? Now, just like my other shot, I have tracked some planes for the background. And you'll see I tracked the front plane of her body, but I also tracked the side plane of her body, okay? Now, there's a reason why I tracked 2 different planes. Just how I said you have 2 planes in your face, right? Front plane, side plane. These planes are at 90-degree angles. So if I track her front and side, and I try to use just her front to solve the side movement, okay, it's going to look really weird. All right, so now I've just tracked 2 different areas, and then I used my Join Layers tool right here to stitch up the scene. So this now seamlessly moves through the shot. Okay, I've done 2 holdout rotos on her left and right hand. All right, and I've just rotoed her waistband and done those tracks. Now, the other thing that I've done is I've checked Use Clean Plates exclusively because I am removing something that I cannot see behind. Okay, so that means that I must only use clean plates, otherwise Mocha will look at this frame and think, hey, she's got a black belt on. Okay, so I've also used an illumination model, and here's why. Let's zoom out on the shot so you can see what's going on. There's camera guys taking pictures of this entire sequence. So if I were trying to patch this with like just a 1-color patch, I would be really frustrated about now because it just flashes like lightning all over the place. So what I've done is I've actually just gone ahead and checked linear illumination modeling on. So basically what Mocha's going to do is Mocha's going to look at this area that it's trying to remove, using my clean plates, it's going to look at the pixels around that area, and it's going to try to match the lighting of the pixels around that area over time. So let's see how good of a job it does. I'm going to hit render forward. And there it is loading in my lovely cone paint job. And it's matching the lighting as it flashes up and down. So that is how you use the remove tool for things you can't see behind. We get used a lot for beauty work, but since it's such an invisible art, nobody really talks about it, you know? So you never see beauty work on somebody's reel, you know, mostly because people won't actually release the previous versions of their faces and stuff to be used in it. All right, so that is Mocha Pro's remove tool. I am Mary Poplin. I'm Imaginary Systems' local LA-based product specialist. If you'd like me to come by and do a demo at your office, please let me know. If you have any questions, please also let me know. Also, if you are upgrading from any version of Mocha for After Effects, which is the version that ships free with After Effects CS4, CS5, CS5.5, and CS6, so if you have any of those versions, you have Mocha for After Effects for free, and maybe didn't know it. It knocks about $600 off list price of our normal Mocha Pro price. So thanks so much, guys, and you guys have a great day.